What's up guys, I'm Michael and welcome back to a brand new FudgeMuppet Skyrim Remastered build. With a fleshed out backstory, fresh playstyle and a bunch of new skills and perks, we've totally overhauled this old favourite. This is the Messenger of Death. The Messenger of Death rose from a rural life, play fighting with sticks, to become the greatest warrior in the Imperial City. She fought her way to the top, taking down the most powerful fighters in all of Tamriel, and now she has harnessed to the dark powers of immortality to truly preserve her might. This versatile assassin switches from silently executing her foes with deadly sneak attacks to a full metal tank in the blink of an eye. Those who won't die quickly and quietly by her blade are subjected to the most painful death imaginable, slowly deteriorating under her poison and bleeding damage while she blocks, bashes, and slashes anyone too stupid to run. Garbed in the Daedric artifact, the Ebony Mail, and wielding the Daedric artifact, Mehrunes Razor, the Messenger of Death is in tune with the darkest forces of Tamriel. She also wields the Taj of the Blooded, a shield with sickening sharp spikes protruding from the front. For a detailed guide on how to get your hands on the poisonous Ebony Mail, check out our mate Camelworks channel where you'll be able to find the very best weapon and armor guides around. There will be a link in the description for anyone interested in his sensational content. Be sure to subscribe. Also, before we jump in, I want to let you know that the next remastered Skyrim build will be the Samurai, as we really want to make you guys a Khajiit build. But now here's the Messenger of Death's race, standing stone, and stats. Unlike most of our builds, this one can be many races. We recommend choosing either a Nord, Imperial, or a Breton, each of which will provide their own unique benefits to the Messenger's kit. The Lover Stone is the best choice of standing stone early on as it maximizes her leveling in all skills. Picking a specific area to level isn't their most efficient choice as she has a variety of skills from a variety of categories. After leveling is done though, the two choices are the Shadow Stone and the Atronach Stone. The Atronach Stone is the most practical option as the 50% spell absorption is unrivaled in combat, but the Shadow Stone fits the role-playing perfectly and offers the useful ability to go invisible once per day. Once again, this decision is all yours. The Messenger of Death's stat spread will be 60% health and 40% stamina. The 60% of health alongside her heavy armor and smithing should be more than enough to keep her alive in combat. As for the 40% investment in stamina, as a former arena fighter, the Messenger had to be able to last surviving relentless onslaughts from ferocious challenges and had to dish it back even harder. Therefore, with 40% stamina, you'll be able to adequately replicate this, constantly bashing with your shield, sprinting constantly if you need to be to different enemies, and power attacking them into oblivion. You can also use it to roll in sneak mode. The Messenger of Death was born in a small rural town in Cyrodiil. She was the youngest of 3 siblings in a farming family, and she got on well with her 2 older brothers. The biggest concern for children in such a small town was finding a way to pass the time, but it just so happened that these children had come up with their own source of entertainment. All of the children from the area would gather in the large meadow at the very edge of town. It was unmistakable from the others as the sound of laughter and cheering could be heard from a mile away. Every child would bring along their favorite fighting stick before dropping their name into a bucket. The names drawn from the bucket would determine who would face who in each bout. Most of the children, the Messenger had noted, opted to bring the longest, largest stick they could find, but she chose to pick something lighter. A stick that wouldn't snap easily, but would move much faster than everybody else's. The Messenger excelled at stick fighting. The game would be decided when one combatant surrendered or blood was drawn. The Messenger never surrendered, and as far as she could remember, she'd never seen the sight of her own blood. She could even beat her older brothers, which angered them greatly. As she aged and became a young adult, the Messenger of Death realized she wanted more than the life of a small-town farmer. She didn't want to settle for the local mason's son, and wanted to wield a sword, not a hoe. One day, she overheard a traveler sharing tales of the Imperial City arena at the local inn. The Messenger was intrigued and decided to check it out. When she made it to the Imperial City, she immediately sought out the arena and enlisted with the Blade Master enthusiastically. She couldn't fathom the size of the crowds the arena pulled. The first crowd she saw was larger than the population of her hometown, and it wasn't even at capacity. She made her way around the bloodworks, too full of excitement to notice the streams of blood flowing across the stone floor. She walked into the armory with youthful confidence and pushed aside the hulking heavy armor to find the lightest leather armor she could. She reached into the weapon rack. Behind rows of great swords and war axes, she found a finely crafted short sword and a small wooden shield, and then she made her way to the steel gates, awaiting her first bout as a pit dog. When the announcer finished his introductions and the gates raised, the messenger stepped out into the arena. Her senses were overloaded by the roar of the crowd, the heckling of the gamblers, the smell of wet dirt and blood, and the sight of a monstrous Goliath of a man charging at her. Her careless excitement shattered when she felt the vibrations of his heavy footfalls getting closer and closer. This massive angry man was nothing like she'd fought before. She always knew that the stakes weren't drawn blood or surrender. She knew this was going to be life and death, but now that reality was really clear. Before the heavily armored man could close in on her with his warhammer, the messenger strafed around a pillar to move out into the open. She would need to answer his strength with mobility. She watched his every move intently, observing every motion as he chased her around the arena. She noticed that he wasn't thinking about his actions. He was fueled only by eagerness and planned to mow her down like a bull. The messenger continued to avoid his advances, working the crowd into a frenzy of anticipation. No notable blow landed for what felt like a lifetime to these impatient spectators. The messenger ducked under yet another hasty strike. She could hear him panting for breath through the opening of his steel helmet. It was then, just after her opponent committed to another brutish and predictable strike, that the messenger made her first offensive move. She rammed her shield into the big man's exposed chest. He tumbled backwards, caught off guard by the suddenness of the counterattack. He fell heavily onto the ground and struggled. After exerting so much effort, he now felt incredibly weighed down by the plates of armor he wore. The messenger of death pounced, discarding her shield and taking her short sword in both hands. She brought the point of the blade down into his throat and watched as the life drained from his neck, seeping into the dirt. The crowd erupted with cheers, brought to life by the death of her foe. The thrill of victory pulsed through her veins and she rose a fist to the sky. The messenger of death was no ordinary young adult. The messenger rarely left the arena after that day. She spent most of her time in the bloodworks training. As she hit the practice dummies, she would hear the muffled sounds of cheering. She would then count to 10, and by the time she hit 10, she would see the first trickles of blood flow down from the arena, down into the bloodworks. The messenger was determined never to let hers be the blood that flows after the cheers herald the latest victor. She gradually rose through the ranks until finally the day came where she was to challenge for the title of Grand Champion. She had prepared for years and was now considered a veteran of the arena. She went through the familiar process of visiting the armory and then ascending to the gates. Her opponent was Seda, the Sand Serpent, a legendary Redguard warrior who was believed to be the fastest dual scimitar wielder in all of Tamriel. She wasn't going to be able to tire him out, so an aggressive approach would be her only option. When the gates opened, she wasted no time advancing into Seda's side of the arena. In the cool evening air, the moonlight glimmered off of Seda's scimitars. As soon as they were within range, they both swung their blades, which met between their faces. Seda smiled before backing off and circling around her. His footwork was flawless and quick. He struck relentlessly, following up each scimitar swing with a strike from the other hand. The messenger blocked his strikes with her shield and parried any that slipped past her first line of defense. She had never needed to be as alert as she was tonight, and despite being in her best form, one of Seda's strikes inevitably caught her. She saw blood rise from the cut on her arm, and couldn't help but imagine her blood draining into the bloodworks. Focus, she thought, shaking her head. They continued to circle around the grate in the middle of the arena, moving in time like some deranged dance. And then came another flurry of swipes from Seda, and the messenger lost her balance, falling backwards onto the uneven surface of the grate. Without giving her a second to think, he swung his scimitar down in an arcing motion, but the messenger rolled to her right, avoiding the blow. Before he could raise his arm from the ground, she lashed out with her short sword, aiming for his exposed arm. She severed his hand completely off, leaving him with only one weapon and one hand. He instinctively backed off, his calm expression replaced with shock. With only his left hand available, the messenger of death could predict his movement much easier. She parried each incoming blow, closed the distance, and then smashed him hard in the face with her shield. He flew back and landed with a thump, his nose bleeding heavily. Standing above his helpless body, she raised her shield and brought it down repeatedly, bashing his head into a messy pulp. When the kill was secured, she rose. She was the Grand Champion. She was granted the opportunity to choose her arena name, and she went with the Messenger of Death. She held onto this title for many more years. She continued to entertain the masses by fighting exotic monsters from all across the land, and she crushed all of her title contenders. Eventually, she came up against a mighty Landdrag, which she predictably dispatched of, but the beast left its mark on her, slicing a wide gash in her leg. The messenger began to question whether her age was risking her ability. She was a bit older now and not as supple as she used to be, or perhaps it was the fact that she was getting lazy, winning what she considered easy fights. One of the new pit dogs, Anord from Skyrim, claimed to be trained by the renowned companions, and upon hearing this, the Messenger of Death was intrigued. She wondered what it would be like to meet the companions of Skyrim, to challenge their best fighter in a battle to the death. She definitely wanted to test her mettle, but knew that if she traveled to Skyrim, she would have to give up her crown, the title of Grand Champion that she'd worked so many years for. Then again, she could probably come win it back, and wasn't sure if it held the same value for her anymore. She wasn't fighting humans very much, and perhaps this was degrading her talents ever so slowly. Fighting a creature is one thing, but coming face to face with one of your own kind is a different feeling altogether. After much indecision over several weeks, the Messenger of Death decided to hang up her arena raiment. She left for the companions, but on her way across the border of Skyrim, she was caught by Imperial guards and carted off to Helgen. When the Messenger escapes Helgen, she resumes her goal of finding the companions in Whiterun. Along the way, she'll actually encounter them fighting a giant on the outskirts of the city. She is dissuaded by their apparent sense of pride from taking down such a simple beast. She gets the idea that if they're so excited about taking down a giant in a 3v1 fight, they can't be nearly as tough as she'd expected. She will be disappointed by their lackluster abilities and considers herself above them. Instead, she will visit Whiterun and take on the challenge of defeating the dragon. Upon defeating it, she thrives on the challenge and embraces the role of Dragonborn, but due to the closeness of the fight, she begins to have doubts about her age, negatively affecting her skills again. After the vampire attack, she is very intrigued and initially intends to take them down as the natural next challenge, but when she follows the Dawnguard questline and discovers the possibility to acquire the gift of immortality, she will choose them in hopes of preserving her abilities and maintaining them for eternity. Her already high drive to fight is taken to the next level when the vampire bloodlust comes into play. This will lead her to eventually joining the Dark Brotherhood, where she can fulfill her new, more sinister desires. Aside from the above-mentioned main story, Dawnguard siding with Volkihar and the Dark Brotherhood, she'll also follow the Dragonborn DLC for the thrill of killing challenging foes and recreating the thrilling violence of the Imperial City Arena. With her backstory, role-playing, and factions in mind, let's see what that means for her skills, perks, and overall playstyle. The main skills for the Messenger of Death are one-handed sneak, heavy armor, and two new additions, block and smithing. She won't be faffing about with magic, so we don't need to talk about spells, but before we do look at her essential perks, it's worth mentioning that using dragon shouts when necessary can fit the playstyle quite well, so feel free to experiment with any you feel fit the Messenger of Death style. But now let's look at the meat and two veg, the perks. Whether it be a makeshift sword created by snapping a long branch in two, or the smallest, lightest sword in the Bloodworks, the Messenger has always opted for the size doesn't matter approach with her choice of weaponry. For that reason, one-handed is a must-have skill. From this skill tree, we suggest taking the middle branch up to Savage Strike. Savage Strike is a favorite pick for all of our one-handers, due to the fact that it gives you the chance to decapitate your foes. It also packs a nifty 25% damage bonus to standing power attacks, of course. Up next, we have Sneak. The Messenger's skill with a short, sharp blade means she is more than capable of dealing with targets with one quick and quiet blow. In the arena, she was always underestimated, and she would consistently surprise her foes with unexpected attacks. From the Sneak skill tree, you should invest completely in every perk. Due to the Messenger's use of heavy armor, muffled movement is a very useful perk, and it's early in the tree too. What it does is reduce noise from armor by 50%. Another extremely powerful perk from this tree is Assassin's Blade. You'll have to slog through the right-hand branch to get to it, but with dagger sneak attacks dealing 15 times normal damage, it is well worth the investment. This perk makes a stealthy approach really viable, meaning the Messenger won't always have to rely on her shield. Next comes heavy armor. Thanks to her ability to sneak around unnoticed, the Messenger of Death can get away with choosing bulky armor while still maintaining the element of surprise. By combining stealth with the option to break out your shield and go full tank, this build is incredibly diverse. From this skill tree, you should take the entire left branch. Conditioning is the big perk here as it stops heavy armor from slowing you down. The last thing you want is to be moving at a snail's pace while shield charging at a very aware group of bandits. The first of our new additions is Block. The Messenger relied heavily on her skill with a shield to advance through the ranks in the Imperial City Arena, even securing the kill that would grant her the Grand Champion title with a shield. Evidently, she knows how to handle one and how to use it with optimal efficiency. You'll want to take every perk from this skill tree. With Block Runner, you'll be able to move faster with your shield raised. This perk further drives home her mobility and helps negate general problems associated with wearing slower, heavier armor. Quick Reflexes is another very useful perk in combat, as the messenger will be raising her shield quite often. Having time slow down when an enemy power attacks means she'll always be one step ahead. It was, after all, her specialty in the arena to let the opponent make the first move, read their move, and then punish them for it. Aside from these, having the ability to power bash and shield charge will be essential to her playstyle. Lastly, but not leastly, we have smithing. This skill is our second new addition. From this skill tree, we recommend taking the right branch to ebony smithing and then taking arcane blacksmith. With ebony smithing, you'll be able to improve the messenger's armor, and with arcane blacksmith, you'll be able to improve her ebony mail, dagger, and unique shield. So with the skills and perks in mind, how will this versatile build play exactly? Well, as you can probably tell, the Messenger of Death is a stealth tank hybrid. She'll capitalize on her stealth abilities to sneak and roll around, aiming for the jugular and executing quick one-hit kills. If shit does hit the fan and arrows start flying, her heavy armor is put to use. Her trusty shield will come out, and the messenger becomes a moving fortress. Her spiked shield can block, bash, ram, and stab until she's the last one standing. When combat does break out, it becomes a war of attrition as she bides her time, allowing the poison effect of her armor and the bleeding effect of her shield to take its deadly toll on her foes, as she slashes them apart with her razor as well. As for her gear, the Messenger of Death is one of our most unique builds. She combines the assassin and warrior aesthetics to create something that perfectly suits her playstyle. On her body, arms, and legs, she'll have pitch black ebony mail, ebony gauntlets, and ebony boots. The ebony mail is an artifact of the Daedric Prince Boethia, and as well as allowing you to move more quietly, opponents who come too close will start taking 5 points of poison damage per second. On her head, she wears the ancient shrouded cow. This dark aesthetic allows her to blend into the shadows, spurring a sense of foreboding in anyone she sets her sights on. As for her weapons, she'll use the Daedric artifact of Mehrunes Dagon, Mehrunes Razor. This dagger has a small chance of killing a foe instantly with each hit, and her shield will be the Taj of the Blooded, which causes 3 points of bleeding damage for 5 seconds when bashing. Combined with the effects of the ebony mail, she'll be consistently dealing damage without actually having to attack with her dagger. You can use your smithing skill to increase the damage of your dagger and the armor rating of all your armor. Be sure to drink a smithing potion before doing any of this though. Hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, because that concludes our latest Skyrim Remastered build, the Messenger of Death. Head down to the description to find links to our social media accounts, links to relevant videos such as those to Camelworks, and timestamps to help you locate each section of the video. Thank you so much for watching everyone, we really appreciate it, and I look forward to nerding out with you again in the next one.